We live in a world that our ancestors would barely recognize. Around the world, the impact of human ingenuity is now everywhere. We've pushed back the limits of our planet at speeds, depths, and heights that would have left our forebears breathless. Driving all these achievements is humankind's extraordinary gift for invention. Through genius and inspiration, we've created exceptional solutions to complex problems. From the everyday to the spectacular. Some of them good and some of them not so good. This series celebrates the million ways our great inventions have transformed our world.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
A marvel of evolution.
The human body is absolutely fascinating.
Incredible, but not indestructible. What can be done when the body cannot regenerate itself?
It's really a wonder of engineering.
Bones, muscles, nerves, connections to the control center. Unimaginable to imitate.
Just imagine how important your hands are to you every single day.
Unbelievable performances in sport. Dramatic fates. A dance with death.
To be injured on the battlefield was, for many soldiers, akin to a death sentence, I should think.
Science fiction already reality today. Cyborgs walk the earth. Where does the machine begin? Where does the human end?
Today, they use some of the most advanced materials that we have and even incorporate the highest end on technology.
With great steps into the future, thanks to Prostheses. The dream of flying with one leg and one prosthetic. This man lives it. Long jumper, Paralympics winner, world champion, Marcus Rehm lost his leg as a teenager in a wakeboard accident.
I knew in the hospital I wanted to get back on the board and did it a year later.
Spectacular tricks on the water. Unbelievable performances at the long jump pit. The face of the Paralympic movement, world record holder, 8 meters 48, with a prosthesis. This would have earned him gold at the last 3 Olympic Games against all non-disabled opponents.
Who's helping who? I don't know. But the point is that the technology in prosthetics is really incredible.
Hardly anybody on this planet is able to jump further than the one-legged man from Germany. His sports prosthesis, the result of a long journey. The history of prosthetics. It begins in Egypt, with the daughter of a priest, buried with highest honors around 800 BC. When examining the mummy, scientists at the University of Manchester are amazed. An artificial toe made of wood and leather.
So it's not a surprise to find that this burial of this elite woman in Egypt, it was important to the society that wanted to honour her that she was buried as whole and entire as possible, even with her prosthetic toe.
The toe, not just a burial object. Traces of use show that the priest's daughter used it while walking around the temples.
So look at the Cairo toe, a wooden prosthetic, that was functional as found by the team in the University of Manchester, and that it was comfortable.
The first written mention of a prosthetic leg? About 300 years later, by the Greek poet Herodotus. Here, a seer amputates one of his legs and then makes one for himself out of wood. About the same time, at the other end of the world, in early Buddhist India, adulteresses are punished by having their noses cut off. The wealthy replace them with prostheses. Instead of the nose, pieces of wood are attached. Then skin is pulled from the forehead over the wound until everything grows together and heals. This is also the birth of plastic surgery. Those who can't afford these painful but aesthetic prostheses have to make do with very simple versions.
One of the early prosthetics was these replacement noses, but they were only made out of materials like clay or wax, very basic.
Prosthetics from another world. In the 300 years before year zero, wooden prostheses spread independently of each other worldwide, as shown by finds in Chinese and European graves. Roman war heroes who lose body parts wear prostheses, if they survive.
Generally speaking, in Roman culture, certainly pre-Christian Roman culture, it was more common to burn the dead rather than it was to bury them. That might account for the rare survival of prostheses from the Roman era.
Roman prostheses made of wood have been burnt or long since decayed. Only one with bronze elements can be scientifically investigated. It was discovered around 200 kilometers from Rome in Capua. It resembles the leg splints that were common at the time. However, it's not clear just how practical it was.
It's hard to imagine what wearing this leg would have been like. You know, even with the wood in the middle, all that bronze is going to make it incredibly heavy. I can't imagine that would have been a comfortable experience.
Wood, a material still used to build prostheses today. Near London, probably the most extraordinary replacement body parts in the world are produced for people for whom a classic prosthesis is not enough.
Some people want one that's just, looks exactly like their leg previously did, to make it look as natural as possible. But other people really embrace the weirdness and choose something that looks sci-fi or just plain bizarre.
Sophie de Oliveira Barata, an artist, studied special effects and wanted to go into film. Then she came across the silicone technique. This is how her path to prosthetics begins.
I started thinking while I was working there, well, if I could, what would I want? And if I was an amputee, and maybe I wouldn't want to blend in with everyone else if I could have something different to, embrace my difference.
Sophie creates art, lifelike prostheses, prostheses that look like tendrils. Her imagination knows almost no bounds. Futuristic cyborgs. Unusual perspectives. Luxury. Every piece a custom-made product.
So put the two together, really, thinking about prosthetics from an artistic perspective, but also rehabilitation-wise, having control over your limb and feeling that it represents, you from your soul, like reflects your personality.
This man also wants to express something with his prosthesis, Andrew Gregory. He injured his leg in a motorcycle accident. After years of pain, he decided on amputation.
I hated using a walking stick, lots of painkillers, and I was really starting to notice that it was limiting my life. My world was getting smaller. And so for me, personally, the decision was quite an easy one to reach.
Andrew wants a prosthetic for his sport. He's a professional pole dancer. In 2019, he participated in the World Cup in Montreal, Canada.
I wanted to maybe be able to hook on the pole or, so I'd be able to do things that actually nobody else would be able to do.
Today, Sophie is mainly known for her work in silicone. The artist has a deep relationship with this material.
Silicon's a brilliant material. It's really durable, waterproof as well, and you can make it really lifelike. So what I do is pigment the material so it comes clear, and then you can put flocking in, which is tiny little fibres to break it, make it look less plasticky. So you've got depth, and I'll kind of build up the colour tones in fine layers, one on one.
Silicone is the basis for most alternative prostheses. She can make the most incredible things from silicone, far from every standard.
You know, it's almost celebrating this technology with this art form because it's making it look attractive, it's making it look cool. I mean, these people look like bionic superhuman.
The work on Andrew's pole dance prosthesis takes several months. At the next World Championships, he wants to use the prosthesis. Sport is important to him, and sport is key for the acceptance of amputees in society.
It's really helped people understand that we're not people to be pitied, that actually we can do great things.
The Paralympics is the largest showcase for prosthetic technology. Every 4 years, the big manufacturers show their products, and the sports also help secure funding for research.
The popularity and money behind Paralympic sports has really been driving development in prosthetics design, and this is actually having knock-on effects for the mass market too.
A new everyday prosthesis for Marcus Rehm, who, as an orthopedic mechanic, builds his own prosthesis. The world record holder is examined with a modern scanner.
If you want to make a prosthetic that exactly fits onto somebody, then being able to design it on a computer and manufacture it by computationally aided methods can massively improve the efficiency of this process.
In the past, prostheses were fitted with plaster, a very dusty job. Today, this is a clinically clean process.
The scanner takes 15 pictures per second, some in colour, so that we can make markings. For example, where the pivot point is, so that later on, the people who make the models in the workshop know exactly where the pivot point is. Using the images the scanner creates, the computer makes a three-dimensional model which would correspond to the plaster model in the classic production method.
The next step. The athlete and his colleague design the new leg on the computer.
The advantage of this technology is that we can also make changes or compare them with other versions.
When worn with trousers, its shape should be that of a real leg, easy to use with the advantages of modern technology.
It's a time that's very exciting for prosthetics because we have the resources and now we can let our creativity and ingenuity really come true and really become lifelike.
The design is brought to life in a laboratory with a modern 3D printer within just a few hours.
"3D printing is sometimes called additive manufacturing. And the reason is that you start with basically nothing and then keep adding something over and over and over again in very small amounts until you've printed the shape that you want to make.
Marcus Rehm can adjust the finished leg. If his body or his requirements change over the course of time, he can easily have a new leg printed without the need for time-consuming new modelling. The sports prosthesis is quite different to his everyday leg. With it, Marcus Rehm can not only jump very far, but also sprint faster than most non-disabled people. But there is some controversy around the prostheses used by top Paralympic athletes.
Modern athletic prosthetics are fascinating and actually a bit controversial, because there are even some people who think that certain kinds of prosthetics, like the blades that are used for leg running, might give the athletes an advantage over athletes who've got their limbs. So it's a fascinating topic, how the Paralympics and the Olympics are going to interact with one another as prosthetics get better and better.
Many, including Marcus Rehm, would like to take part in the Olympic Games. They want to prove that the prosthesis does not provide an advantage over other athletes' two normal legs. Studies show the prosthesis has better spring-like qualities, but its properties are worse than those of a real leg when starting.
In some areas, we may get close to healthy body parts. Or when it comes to injuries, if a prosthesis breaks, I can build a new one. With a bone, this is not so easy.
To understand this technology, we have to turn back time. In this castle, in the southwest of Germany, there once lived a knight. His name, Get von Berlichingen, the legendary title character of the famous drama by Goethe. Legendary because of his prosthesis, the Iron Hand.
Goetz of the Iron Hand was a knight in Germany. He lost his right hand in 1504, and it was on his sickbed that he came up with the idea of an iron hand.
He has two prostheses built. A rather simple one, which he wears almost every day. Even today, you can still see that it was once painted in a skin tone. The second prosthesis is much more complex. Goetz protects it and wears it rather rarely. Here, it's examined in front of the cameras for the first time in decades. The Iron Hand is the most advanced of its time and one of the most famous artifacts in German history.
It is indeed unique. It's a masterpiece of precision engineering. The hand is made up of 152 individual parts. It functions such that the individual joints, here at the front, are all movable. And he could use his healthy hand to position it as required.
High-tech of the Middle Ages. Who built the hand? This information has been lost over the centuries. Later, the prosthesis was taken apart and construction plans were drawn.
The hand, as you can see here, was pushed onto the arm stump and fastened with this leather strap so that it was properly united with the body.
Get von Berlichingen will live with his prosthesis for almost 50 years. But it was not until 400 years later that his prosthesis becomes the source of inspiration. 1916, the First World War devastates Europe. The young surgeon Ferdinand Sauerbruch has an idea for an advanced prosthesis to support the many war disabled. He borrows the Iron Hand to study its technology.
At that time, it was in the middle of the First World War. Our family naturally made the hand available so that further knowledge could be gained from the mechanics of this hand. Then, tragically, we didn't get it back fully functional.
Since then, no scientist has had the most famous prosthesis of its time in their hands. Sauerbruch develops a prosthesis, which becomes standard from the First World War until well into the 1950s. The Sauerbruch arm.
So the Sauerbruch arm, the amazing thing it was able to do was to move the fingers in response to muscles in the upper arms.
The prosthesis is connected to the muscles of the arm stumps with 2 pins. If the patient tenses, the hand closes. Later, during the Third Reich, Ferdinand Sauerbruch is the most famous doctor in Germany. A controversial character in history, whose fame begins with a prosthesis. And they are also famous for their prostheses. Pirates in the golden age of piracy around the 17th century.
Pirates are very popular in Hollywood, and they do have the prosthetics in there. Captain Hook and for instance Ahab with his wooden leg and all that sort of stuff. But it's kind of more romanticized because this was an incredibly violent and also a very unhygienic time to be alive.
Pirates are very popular in the arts long before Captain Jack Sparrow. The pirate film is one of the oldest film genres of them all. As well as crazy, often outlandishly portrayed pirate captains, there's always someone with a prosthesis. But the role models are real. On the Buccaneers' ships, they are quick to amputate.
On board a ship, there really is only one option. Take the limb off, and if possible, give this person, even if it's a rudimentary lower limb or something, because this ship is rolling around. There really is no other option here if you want to keep this person on board. And finally, all of these ships would have had a carpenter to carry out running repairs on the ships. So maybe we should also think about these carpenters carrying out running repairs on the men.
The situation on board ships and on the battlefields of Europe changes in the 17th century. More people survive an amputation. A French surgeon discovers a way to chemically disinfect wounds. He mixes 3 ingredients: turpentine, fresh tree resin, which kills bacteria, rose oil to stop the bleeding, and egg yolk to make a kind of cream that takes several hours to be absorbed into the skin.
And what that meant is that there's no more cauterizing of wounds with hot irons, which really does not sound pleasant at all. It's revolutionized how we treat wounds.
1914. The First World War begins. Brutal fighting takes place all over the world. The following 4 years changed prosthetics decisively.
A lot of advances in science have unfortunately been driven by war, and prosthetics are no exception. If you imagine getting an injury in a battle and losing your arm or losing your leg, it's replacing the lost limbs of those soldiers that was one of the driving factors behind the development of prosthetic limbs.
Between 1914 and 1918, 20 million people die. 21 million are injured. How many of them lose limbs is not known. The military hospitals are overcrowded, and as on the pirate ships 300 years ago, amputations are often performed to prevent dangerous gangrene taking hold. Thanks to another invention from Great Britain, many wounded people now survive, and there are more and more people who need prostheses. But who's going to make them all? In 1865, Joseph Lister operates with bandages that he has immersed in diluted carbolic acid, the invention of disinfectant as we know it today.
Joseph Lister from Essex was the father of antiseptic surgery. By Joseph Lister saying that you could use phenol to disinfect wounds, it meant that, particularly during World War I, that a lot more of these soldiers were surviving their amputations. And actually that came with a problem because actually we needed more prosthetics.
The first orthopedic mechanics are craftsmen. Even amputees are beginning to work in this field and to provide for themselves.
Lots of people were trying their hands at it, like carpenters and mechanics. These are not really professional prosthetic makers, and yet they were trying to make things. I can't imagine that they would have been particularly comfortable, particularly useful, but that was the best that was around at the time.
After the end of the war, a new problem has to be solved. What to do with the many amputees? From the point of view of some hardliners, they're of no benefit to society, and prostheses, such as the Sauerbruch arm, are far too expensive to give to everyone.
All of these injured soldiers were not able to return to work. having knock-on effects on the economy, and also really just affecting the mood of society of the time.
Those who lose an arm or a leg for honor and fatherland often end up as beggars on the street. In Germany in particular, this leads to difficulties which the state also recognizes. It needs workers and wants to see the people making a living, not least so that they pay taxes. But how can this work?
So they instigated a competition with prize money for the best, but also the cheapest prosthetic. And so all of these craftsmen put their hands to work and trying to come up with these. And it really became the professionalization of that community and the development of orthopedics.
The fight against germs and bacteria has always been a major problem with amputations. After disinfectant and antiseptic, the next milestone comes along between the world wars. The military hospital physician Alexander Fleming makes a discovery in 1928 and revolutionizes medicine: a mold fungus which attacks bacteria, the antibiotic penicillin.
Antibiotics are absolutely crucial to amputation and prosthetics because it means that when you're doing this operation, obviously you're cutting off a leg, you've got direct access, loads of blood going everywhere. You want to make sure that bacteria don't get into the wound because they can make it go septic and have terrible, terrible consequences.
After years of research, in 1945, Fleming succeeds in producing his mold commercially. A resounding success. To this day, people are healed.
So a revolution in medical care, and everything from surgery to amputation to cancer care, was the development of antibiotics, medicines that could kill bacteria whilst not killing the human cells in your body.
The Second World War is over. A new time begins. Also thanks to pioneering research emerging from the dark years. Technology is advancing and changing everything. Since the 50s, at the latest, science fiction has been one of the most loved genres of popular culture. What the authors came up with at that time, 30 years later, is slowly beginning to enter our everyday lives and to change it permanently. Technology in music, culture, at home, and in the workplace.
So it's an exciting time in technological development. Electronics is moving rapidly. And if you think taking that technology and then taking together with how the body works, that has led to some real developments in bionics.
The perfection of nature. Science analyzes and draws conclusions from it. For example, to build a human hand.
Nature has had millions of years of evolution by natural selection to create these, incredible structures that our hands are. All these bones and nerves and blood vessels and muscles, all really carefully put together in such a way as it can move very dexterously, feel incredibly detailed surfaces. It's going to be very, very hard for us to reproduce that with engineering.
An artificial hand that can move all 5 fingers, just like the natural one. It should be able to do everything: push, pull, tie. And a Scottish engineer makes this possible.
Artificial hands before the iLim hand did not give you choices of more than one grip. The iLim hand, because the fingers and thumb are individually moving and can be controlled in patterns, different patterns, give you the choice of many more grips.
The brain remembers the movements and activates the remaining muscles on the remaining limb. These move all 5 fingers, an absolute revolution.
The hand works by taking little electrical signals that are made when your muscles contract under the surface of the skin and picking them up with an electrode sensor like this, which is then placed on the surface of the skin.
Now, an artificial hand can do almost everything that a human hand can. For example, tie shoelaces or use cutlery. Extremely simple for people with 2 hands, but until now, impossible with prostheses. There's only one thing the artificial hand can't do.
The real difference is it doesn't have a skin like ours, and it doesn't have that sense of touch, which I guess comes with some pros and cons, right? We're used to being able to touch things, but also You know, we feel pain in our hands, and this hand doesn't do that.
Prostheses change the lives of their wearers, of humans, and thanks to the love of animals and enthusiasm for technology of some veterinarians, also of our four-legged friends.
It's not only us humans that are able to take advantage of prosthetics. You know, our pets, for instance, and all manner of other animals are also reaping the benefits.
Animal orthopedists design completely individual prostheses for each animal and each injury. This dog is getting his first and is carefully accustomed to the new aid. After the first attempts on 2 legs and wheels, the fun factor is not neglected. But not only dogs benefit, even elephants get prostheses. For example, this elephant, Mosha, in Thailand, who lost her leg to a landmine.
I mean, that's a remarkable achievement to have a prosthetic for something as large as an elephant. Wow.
No less exciting is the story of a type of prosthesis that has become an integral part of our lives.
Dental prosthetics are at once amazing and yet really still rather old-fashioned. Because actually, if you're going to have something like a crown installed, the best material, even in modern dentistry, is gold, which has been used for hundreds, maybe thousands of years to restore teeth.
Celts, Egyptians, and Etruscans were already producing dentures centuries before our era. The Etruscan masters even made the first bridges out of gold. These are partly equipped with animal or human teeth, like those belonging to the first American president, George Washington, in the 18th century. Here is one of his prostheses, but you won't see him smile with it. Since the 18th century, when it comes to dentures, gold has not only been a buzzword on everyone's lips. However, gold is very noticeable, which is why patients mainly prefer ceramics or plastics for their current dental prostheses.
Teeth are incredibly important, and so the development of prosthetic teeth, even for children, for milk teeth, you know, there are knock-on effects if you don't replace them if they come out. So we have fantastic dental care and dental prosthetics that we're putting to use.
Dental prostheses are the most frequently used prostheses worldwide for children, elderly people, and accident victims. It's lucky this substitute exists, after all. Who wants a toothless smile? Here in South Tyrol, Italy, people are working on an almost unsolvable problem. Surrounded by mountains, the small town of Brixen. Here, 2 scientists are working on a prosthesis that will be able to do the most important thing our natural limbs can do: feel. Dietmar Schmey loses his leg in a motorcycle accident. Along with the amputation, he has an extremely unpleasant side effect: phantom pain.
The special thing about Mr. Schmey is that he was operated on his thigh 30 times. He had very, very strong phantom pain. He was extremely dependent on medication.
Phantom pain is a challenge for scientists. For centuries, researchers believed this pain was imaginary. Now they know it's not.
Some people have very few problems, others have many. I had it very intensively, and that was a huge problem. You can't actually live your life normally. You have to align it with the pain.
Hubert Egger has dedicated his life to the search for an answer. After studying communications engineering, he works in a hospital, the beginning of an idea for an incredible solution for his patients, for example, this prosthesis wearer.
So the phantom pain basically takes place in the head. It's a pain that isn't real. It's a pain that's felt outside the body where the limb is missing.
Egger's idea to give the stump of the leg back the feeling of the sole of the foot. First with a nerve diversion, and then an extension of the prosthesis with a sensor and transmitter. The idea came through his special perspective.
How does the human body function electrically? The eyes are cameras, the ears microphones. The sense of touch is comparable to a series of sensors that record physical quantities such as temperature and vibration.
I mean, is that really possible to have an artificial leg feel? That's nuts.
Until now, only a few patients have received this customization. Dietmar Schmey is the first person in the world who has been amputated at the thigh on which the operation is performed.
The nerves are only taken from the stump, and that is the beauty of this method, that the nerves are redirected or transplanted at the stump. We only have to connect it at the end of the stump and at the beginning of the leg.
Which nerve ended up where? That's for the doctors to figure out now. For almost a year, the stump has been mapped. Where is the nerve that feels the heel? Where is the nerve from the edge of the foot or the big toe?
When I wipe, it shifts again from the heel, Achilles tendon, forward to the little toe.
The team is enthusiastic. Dietmar Schmey feels his foot on the stump side, not all areas yet, but that will come with time. The next step is to adapt the prosthesis to the remaining limb.
How does that information from the artificial sole make it all the way up through the prosthetic and connect through at the stump? It must be incredibly complicated.
The technique consists of a sensor sock that is put over the foot of the prosthesis. This sock registers the ground. This data is sent to a device in the shaft and transmitted to the skin via vibration. No high-tech version is needed. This technology works with every leg prosthesis. It only needs to be upgraded with the sensor sock and the sensor in the shaft.
It's actually incredible that a lost feeling returns. And it is incredibly pleasant for the mind that you are not guided by the pain or the disability anymore, but that you can simply participate in normal life again.
And it works. Dietmar Schmey is able to reduce his painkiller dosage many times over. A prosthesis that feels. Research is beginning to tread paths that no one could have dreamed of only 50 years ago. Dreams are a driving force for invention. And Hugh Hare, a passionate free climber and biophysicist, also has them. He had wanted to be an athlete, a professional climber. Attending university was not his goal. But then, at the age of 17, he loses both of his legs just below his knee while ice climbing. Giving up has never been an option. In hospital, he already realizes that he wants to climb again. And because none existed back then, he simply designs his own climbing prosthesis.
I love climbing. It's absolutely wonderful. And it's led me to where I am today.
Climbing is still a hobby, but his profession is a different one. He's a professor and a pioneer in the field of bionic prostheses. Bionics, the imitation of nature. The most famous examples, the large burdock with its hooks that stick in fur, inspiration for the hook and loop fastener. Or the suction cup of octopuses, with whose technology people can safely lift glass. Hare's workplace, the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Boston. A cathedral of science.
MIT is a magical place. I remember walking around, going through the corridors and just in an absolute dream, because this really is the birthplace of some of the most iconic and epic inventions that we've ever come up with as human beings.
Here, Hugh Hare and his colleagues are working on a prosthesis to help the amputee walk better. The aim is to transfer the human movement pattern such as the individual running style, to these prostheses. This can actually solve a major problem of leg amputees.
Each bionic limb has 3 computers, the brains of the system, various sensors to sense its environment, and a muscle tendon-like actuator, a motor system. And when I walk, it adapts automatically with variations in speed and terrain in a way that's completely natural. We actually embedded on chip the fundamentals of how muscles are controlled that span the ankle joint.
But the road to this prosthesis is long. First of all, the team has to analyze the motion sequence in detail. How does each individual muscle work? What's its job? With the data, algorithms are calculated to transfer the physiology to the technology.
This is the first prosthesis in history that's powered, that emulates lost muscle function. Conventional prostheses are passive, like a bicycle's passive, so only the residual muscles power the movement. But with this, it actually injects energy into the walking or running gait, emulating lost muscle function.
A motorized prosthesis that mimics muscles. The change from a passive to an active prosthesis is immediately noticeable.
Within minutes, often, a person can walk normally and says to us, I have my body back, I have my life back.
Oh my God.
Pushing you up?
Yes, I'm not even, I can't even describe it.
But there is still more to improve. The shaft, for example, is always a big problem. The connecting link between prosthesis and stump. The human leg as inspiration. Here, it's measured how firm muscles and tissues are. With this, Hare wants to improve the material for the socket so that it adapts perfectly to the stump. Joints are also part of the research at MIT, including artificial foot and knee joints. But that's not all. The team is also working on an exoskeleton for humans so that they can walk further or more quickly.
There's a huge amount of research into exoskeleton, mainly focusing in 3 different areas. So firstly, there are exoskeletons for paraplegics and enabling them to walk, for instance. The other one is to increase the mechanical advantage of people who do heavy lifting. And then the third one, obviously, are the military applications.
The American Department of Defense is already experimenting in the field with exoskeletons that are intended to make soldiers stronger and faster. In the civil sector, Hugh Hare is leading prosthetics into the future.
To me, I am utterly fascinated by Bionics. It's human enhancement. So I just love designing Bionics. I love every few months upgrading my own legs so I have better balance, I can move faster. You know, it's interesting because my biological body, as I age, gets worse and worse due to age-related degeneration, but the artificial part of my body gets better in time. So I predict when I'm 80 years old, my balance will be better than an 18-year-old. That's a lot of fun.
What sounds like science fiction has long since become a reality.
The real science fiction is going something more than human, you know, augmenting the human condition. And actually, that's becoming a reality too.
Evolution is a long process of change. We continue to develop and make use of technology. But a new grouping is using technology to change not only our environment, but ourselves.
My name is Mon Rivas. I'm a cyborg artist. I have an implant in my body that allows me to feel the seismic activity of the planet. It is connected to online seismographs, and every time there's an earthquake anywhere in the planet, I feel a vibration inside my body.
The Spaniard, Moon Rivas, studies choreography and wants to experience movement in a different form. She belongs to a group of people who call themselves cyborgs and use technology to enhance their natural senses.
The cyborg is a combination of sort of living tissue and machine brought together. No, I mean, that could be almost anything, right? You know, and there are tons of examples in science fiction that take it really quite far, but actually it can be, you know, even quite simple as well.
Besides Moon Ribas, Neil Harbison is also part of the steadily growing community. But for him, the premise is different.
Moon and I are childhood friends. We're from a small town in the north of Barcelona. Since I was 11, Moon would tell me the colors and I would try to memorize. So we compared our realities because we knew that they were different, that I saw in grayscale and she saw in color. And then I became interested in sensing color, but I didn't want to change my black and white vision because to me, seeing in grayscale has many advantages. I have better night vision.
Neil has found a way to perceive colors through sounds. An app illustrates how Neil hears colors. The color spectrum is matched to the sound spectrum, so that all colors have different sound frequencies.
It's kind of so outside of the realms of what I could even imagine to experience things like colours through sound in a completely different sense. And the fact that we can do that just with a chip, that's amazing.
The antenna registers the colours and sends them to a chip in his brain. With this new sense of hearing colours, he can also perceive infrared and ultraviolet light. Neil is different from his friends at the Cyborg Foundation because he is the world's first officially recognized cyborg. Because he is allowed to wear a device, his prosthetic, in the photo on his ID. Normally, he would have to take it off, except, as a cyborg, he doesn't. Neil's cyborg art combines colors with sound. Colors create music and, at the same time, it's an attempt to share his point of view with other people. Moon has also combined her art with her expanded sense and created a performance, Waiting for Earthquakes. She invites the audience to wait for an earthquake with her and to see her, herself, as a translator of the data she receives from the Earth.
If there is a need for some kind of new form of prosthetic, I'm sure that we will invent it.
Out of necessity, Prostheses research began to help disabled people, offering them the possibility to walk again or to grasp. Prostheses change people. Faster, more powerful, expandable to include senses never imagined. Who and what will we become in the future?
The history of prosthetics, going from something as simple as just a wooden toe to what we're able to do today with replacing limbs, replicating feeling, and even augmenting our everyday senses. So inspiring.
Wars. They create suffering, yet they are the catalyst for innovation. They are the reason for the transformation from clumsy to functioning replacement limbs.
Developments in new technology at the start of the 20th century that are perfected and improved on the battlefield.
Today, other areas are the driving force for inventions.
Paralympians who are able to do the most amazing things thanks to the technology.
Within the art world, the human aspect is ignored and completely different prostheses are created.
In the future, it's easy to imagine that prosthetics won't just be used to help people who've had injuries, but to actually enhance human capabilities.
What researchers are doing today is helping amputation victims in a way never seen before. And that allows us to do things beyond our humanity. The world is thereby confronted with new ethical questions. And yet,
the fact that with prosthetics we're able to enable huge numbers of people around the world to have an everyday existence that they otherwise wouldn't be able to is why prosthetics are a great invention.